By investing it properly, you can get a double-digit return like that.
I want to retire comfortably, but I'm worried I've waited too long for that to be possible. I'm 43 and only have about $250,000 in all my retirement accounts. What advice can you give me to try to retire well? Love this question to end on, John, because we've had a $3.7 million net worth. We've had a $2 million net worth. There may be a lot of people out there going, oh, that's not me. I'm never going to be that. Can I even do this? And Martin is right there, right? $250,000 at 43. There are probably a lot of people watching and listening that are in that same position as Martin going, I don't know what to do. I don't know if I'm going to make it. Well, the first thing I would say to Martin and anybody else out there in the same position, you have not waited too long. At 43, Martin still potentially has 2 decades of work life and contributions left to grow that nest egg from $250,000. As long as Martin doesn't want to retire tomorrow or in the next 3 or 4 years, there's still plenty of time.
Scott, you've got to remind Martin about the rule of 72 and use the rule of 72. This is a mathematical formula that basically gives you a general idea. It's not a guarantee or anything of that nature, but is a general idea about how money works. And if you take the rule of 72 and apply it to Martin's situation, he's actually going to do pretty well. He's got $250,000 right now. If Martin gets a 10% return on average on that $250,000 over the next 20 years, and you go 10% return, how's that possible? Well, the S&P 500 has averaged about 10% over the last 20 or 30 years, long-term average. And so by investing it properly, you can get a double-digit return like that. That return is hypothetical. It's not representative of any type of investment per se, but the S&P 500 as a proxy for the stock market has had a track record of averaging in that 10% range. All that being said, if you think about what Martin is doing here, is if he just takes that $250,000, he could have $2 million by age 65 if he just allows that to be invested properly, leave it alone, and let it grow. Now, that doesn't mean anything about what Martin could add to it in terms of accumulating additional dollars.
Yeah, and I say this often too, John. I become a firm believer in the number one thing you can do to create true financial independence is to create margin in your life. And by that, I mean a spread between your income and your expenses. And I think that's the question for Martin. Where is that margin? Do you need to increase income? Do you need to lower expenses? Do you need to do both? Because that's where you're going to get the cash flow to increase your contributions. And I would even say max out your retirement contributions, whatever. We don't know what options Martin has, but if he's got a 401k and he's closing in on age 50, by the time he gets to age 50, it's going to be higher than that by the time he gets there. But right now, someone turning age 50 can get over $30,000 into their 401k.
Yep.
And that does not exclude them, John, from potentially still on the outside of that contributing to a traditional or Roth IRA.
Scott, I'll tell you, another thing that could happen here is that if Martin is industrious and he creates a little side gig, he could throw a ton of money into that retirement because he's not living on that money now. And so if he added even $1,000 a month in a side gig, that's a huge boost to his trip down financial independence territory. And I think that another thing that Martin's got to do here, Scott, is he's got to be sure to control his mindset because he's come at this from the standpoint of, I think I might be too late. It is not too late. You have to bow up on this thing, as I like to say. You've got to keep a proper perspective on things like market variations and not allow a recession that's likely to come along in the next 20 years. Almost assuredly, we're going to have a recession. I don't know when. People have been talking about it for the last 3 or 4 years. Yep. I don't know when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. But you have to keep the right perspective on that recession and understand what you're doing. If you're accumulating money into your retirement account, you're actually buying more shares than you could have bought if the price were higher. And that price will eventually at some point in time go back up more than likely. So you've got to understand kind of the dynamic of what you're working with here. But the main thing that I want to say is that it's really all about your mindset, your determination, and your focus. And I think that's where a financial advisor could do Martin a lot of good, to be that coach, to come alongside him and be that voice in his ear, that reasoned voice that really does kind of cut through all of the noise that Martin might hear otherwise about his effort to become financially independent.
You know, we sat in on a call with First Trust advisors earlier this week, and they're a partner of ours, an investment company. You can go out and look at them online, but we use some of their investments in our clients' portfolio, and we were getting their outlook from their equity strategist about what to look for in 2025, you know,
Right.
and their expectations are dampened a little bit compared to the last 2 years where we've accelerated north of 20% returns in the S&P 500. But he went through all the particulars about why things might be slowing down and where there might still be some opportunities, and it may have been in his mind sounding a little negative, and he ended it with this. He said, but stay invested. Don't get out of the market. And to your point, he was saying,
That's right.
He said he's been in the business for 30 plus years, and he's never talked to anybody who got out of the market and was able to find the right time to get back in. So that mindset is critical. We're going to have a downturn, but for people in Martin's situation, people who are even closing in closer to retirement, you can't afford to let that drop you out of the market, take you out of the market, because his point was, when are you going to get back in? Because it's going to start going up, and you're going to go, oh, maybe it'll go back down again, and then I'll get back in, and then it never does.
Yeah. And people who try to time the market generally are going to lose that bet, because there is no rhyme or reason to it. The without a doubt, and I know it sounds boring and it's not, anything that's real sexy or anything, but what you want to do is you just want to stay the course and stay invested. People, time and consistency in your actions and in your plan are going to help you drive financial independence more than just about anything else that you could do.